The sky was filled with gorgeous fireworks, and we were all dancing on the deck of a luxury yacht. Then an airplane flew through the sky, drawing a pink heart and a declaration of love. Now, this is what I call a rich person's party. And not just a party, but a wedding. Because my mother just married an actual billionaire. And that's what I call lucky. Afterward, I had so many opportunities up for me that I could have only dreamed of before. Shopping at elite boutiques, dining at trendy restaurants, getting front row seats to extreme sports, not to mention getting pampered at beauty salons. All my dreams were coming true, and I was unbelievably happy because there wasn't anything I couldn't have. But then everything changed when Mr. Andrews' biological daughter, Camilla, arrived from London. There was a real commotion in the mansion that day. Even my mom was extremely worried because she didn't know Mr. Andrews' daughter. She ran all over the place with a present for Camilla and ended up breaking an ancient Greek vase that Mr. Andrews loved, which was also incredibly expensive. I didn't understand what all the fuss was about because I didn't really care about meeting her. But I should have. Camilla threw a tantrum as soon as she stepped over the threshold of the house. She wouldn't shake hands with my mother, looked angrily at me and her father, and became completely hysterical. "How could you marry someone else? I thought you would be faithful to my mother," she shouted. Mr. Andrews said softly that her mother had died over 10 years ago, but that wasn't enough for Camilla. She was angry and upset, and she ran to her room in tears. My name is Helena, and this is my story about how my mother married a billionaire, which changed my life dramatically. Being rich is cool, but it also creates a lot of problems, especially when you become part of another family. Well, let me tell you all about it. That first encounter with my stepsister clearly didn't go well. She didn't leave her room all evening, and Mom and Mr. Andrews were restless. No one expected her to react so violently to her father's new wife. It was only after night fell that she finally came out into the kitchen. She ignored everyone, though, aside from giving us a cold look. Her father wasn't happy, and he decided to talk to her. I don't know what exactly Mr. Andrews said to her, but Camilla came into the living room and apologized to us. But it wasn't a sincere apology. I could tell just by looking into her eyes that she hated me and my mom. And then she began to show it. She pulled the first of her underhanded tricks at a dinner party. Mr. Andrews decided to have a party in honor of his daughter's return from summer break, as well as in honor of the wedding. The entire upper crust of Los Angeles showed up. Camilla was very gloomy. She barely spoke to anyone. It was only when the children of other rich families showed up that she perked up a little. Apparently, these were her friends. I also decided to join them, but they didn't want to let me into their circle. You see, I wasn't rich by birth, but by pure chance. "There is no place for someone like you. You'll always be a commoner," Camilla said, and they all laughed at me. But that clearly wasn't enough for her. Camilla began to tell all of the guests that she had a wonderful stepsister who was attending a remedial school, and everyone believed her blatant lie. According to her, I only recently learned to read. I still don't count very well, and I'm generally slow on the uptake. I wanted to pour punch on her expensive dress, but I held back. And then Camilla, when she found out that I was allergic to shrimp, slipped them onto my plate. And right in front of everyone, I began to choke, flush, and swell up. Mom immediately ran up to me, and Mr. Andrews called an ambulance. My allergy is so severe that I almost suffocated. My tongue and throat swelled up really badly. I was sure I was about to die. At the hospital, Camilla put on an innocent face and stated that she didn't know anything about my allergy. She just wanted me to get a chance to eat some tasty shrimp. Mr. Andrews, of course, believed his daughter, but my mother didn't. When my mother was left alone with me, she said that I shouldn't mess with Camilla anymore because she was very spoiled and therefore dangerous. I agreed with her. I figured I would just have to put up with this mischievous girl over the summer, and then she'd go back to London until Christmas. But it was impossible to completely ignore Camilla because I was constantly running into her in the mansion. And every time, she insulted me in some way or did something nasty. Once, I found a bunch of toads in my room, croaking loudly. Yuck! I was so grossed out that I nearly fainted. It might be hard to believe, but at that moment, I was ready to give up all the money just to have Camilla go away. That monster wouldn't let me relax in my own house for even a moment. She replaced my sunscreen with glue, ordered the servants to lock my door, and then switched my bubble bath with dye. I ended up turning blue. I looked like a Smurf. But that wasn't the worst part. Mr. Andrews gave me a cool car, which his daughter really didn't like. So at night, while everyone was asleep, Camilla spray-painted graffiti on it. When I saw my car in the morning, I couldn't hold back my tears and yelled at Camilla. And she was just scolded, and that was it. I mean, just think, she ruined someone's car. What a minor thing, right? And then, when the whole family went to Disneyland, she paid a young employee a huge amount of money to stop the roller coaster right when I was hanging upside down. How do I know? Well, the worker got in trouble for what happened and threw Camilla under the bus. But she was the daughter of someone important, and she ended up getting off with a warning. Oh, great! And what about me? I was almost scared to death. I knew that Camilla was doing this on purpose to create tension in the family. She probably hoped that because of this, my father would divorce my mother. But despite everything, they were still happy and enjoyed each other's company. I was happy for them, but Camilla didn't want to share in their happiness. She was a selfish girl who didn't care about what her father wanted. She only cared about her happiness and comfort. She never thought about others. I thought all rich people were like that, but I was wrong again. When Mr. Andrews organized another party, a guy I hadn't seen the last time showed up. His name was Jake, and he tried to stay out of the thick of things. I went up to him and introduced myself. He also came from a wealthy family, but he wasn't spoiled because his parents were strict. It was difficult for him to talk to the other rich kids because he didn't spend tons of money on all sorts of nonsense. We got along well, and at the end of the evening, we swapped contact information. I was glad that I had a high society friend. Now these parties wouldn't be so boring anymore. And who would have thought that my friendship with Jake would help me get closer to Camilla? As it turned out, she had liked him for a long time. To her, he seemed mysterious and interesting, but she didn't dare approach him, since Jake avoided all the rich kids. Camilla suddenly came up to me and asked how I had managed to make friends with him. I was surprised at this question. I explained that Jake was an ordinary guy and that it was easier for him to talk to other ordinary people rather than snooty brats. Camilla instantly became sad and then asked me to teach her how to be an ordinary girl. I was pretty taken aback. I mean, it's not exactly something you can learn, is it? Especially not for someone like Camilla, who's been self-centered and spoiled since she was little. But for some reason, I couldn't say no. Camilla was family now, after all. So I started explaining to her how not to act in front of Jake. She even wrote down my advice. Believe it or not, we even rehearsed how normal people who don't spend a lot of money talk. My new sister tried to smile more and not look down on people. I never thought that having a crush on a guy could affect an arrogant rich kid that much. And our classes clearly did her good. For practice, she spent a lot of time talking to my mother during breakfast, which shocked everyone. They had a lot in common, so Camilla was able to quickly find a common language and even made friends with her. Mom was very happy, and Mr. Andrews was doubly happy. And when we were going to an expensive restaurant, Camilla asked my mother for advice on what dress she should wear. With that, my mother instantly blossomed and willingly helped her. I saw how Camilla's heart gradually melted, and she no longer seemed like the quarrelsome, spiteful person I met that first day. She probably just didn't get enough attention and couldn't come to terms with her mother's death. The day we met with Jake, she even got flustered. At first, the guy was skeptical of her because he knew how Camilla could be. But after a couple of hours of talking, his opinion changed. He saw a different side of her. She wasn't an arrogant brat, but a sweet and pleasant girl. I was very happy for them. Only this story had another darker side. All of Camilla's friends suddenly turned their backs on her. You see, they had nothing in common. But she could still go back to them if she went back to how she was and stopped spending time with rejects like me and Jake. Camilla was very worried because she cared about her friends. She thought about it for a long time and decided to act like a rich brat in front of them and like a kind girl in front of me and Jake. Only now she couldn't pass the test that her friends had prepared her for. They wanted her to sneak up to Jake's house and spray paint his convertible. I was shocked when Camilla agreed and even asked for my help. Naturally, I refused and tried to convince her that it wasn't worth it. They aren't your friends, not when they force you to do such awful things. But Camilla didn't listen to me. Oh, how hard it is at times to be a child in a wealthy family. You have to go to great lengths in order not to lose your status and authority. Camilla was gone for 2 whole hours, and then we got a call from the police. Mr. Andrews turned pale when he was told that his daughter was at the police station. We went there immediately. She sat in front of the cop, ashamed, and Jake and his parents stood next to her. Camilla said that she didn't have time to do anything and didn't want to, because at the last moment she changed her mind about doing something that might hurt Jake. For an hour, we all dealt with this. And then Mr. Andrews also had to pay that family so that they didn't create a public scandal about it. At first, Jake was angry with Camilla, but when she apologized and explained everything to him, he forgave her. After that, we were finally able to live in peace and harmony. On the one hand, being a member of a wealthy family is pretty cool, but on the other, it's really difficult. The situation with Camilla made that pretty clear to me. Because she stayed friends with us. All the other wealthy kids distanced themselves from her. But she didn't mind as much, since she had me and Jake. Would you have helped Camilla? Write your answers in the comments. Like the video, and share it with your friends. And